So, Reggie has been doing interviews.
Reggie Jackson?
Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Reggie from the fucking Idol?
From
American
Nintendo.
Idol? Okay.
Well, ex-Nintendo, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Was it Reggie at American Idol? What was that guy's name? I thought it was Reggie. Anyway, I don't know.
I don't know. So he's been doing interviews, and in December, late December, he did an episode of Present Value. It's a podcast about business leadership, recorded by Cornell University graduate students.
I'd love to listen to that.
And they talked to him, and they were talking about his time at Nintendo, and he mentioned that when he joined Nintendo. It says here, when I joined Nintendo, there was a sense of almost shame that Nintendo appealed to young consumers. We see that, I think, sometimes when Nintendo comes up with an idea, especially when Nintendo's releasing new consoles. People like to say Nintendo's for the kids, it's for children, it's a kiddie console, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting that he brings that up because it's something that Nintendo themselves apparently were grappling with. So he says, the marketing team at Nintendo started doing things with the logo. So that classic Nintendo logo, they would put it in like a graffiti style, or they do different things to try and age up the logo.
Jesus God.
I put a stop to that because that is not our brand. What we needed to do was, yes, appeal to a broad swatch of consumers, but we needed to do it based on what the brand stood for and not in some false way. After reading this article before the podcast, I started thinking about how long the Nintendo logo has existed without any real changes.
How long does it go back to?
I think they said it goes back to the 60s, I think they said.
60s. I was going to say 60s?
Yeah.
So we're talking 50 years.
Yeah. And just that classic oval. And I mean, to me, personally, that logo is, it's synonymous. I can't picture.
I'm looking at it right now. So the Nintendo font, according to this Logopedia site, which exists, the actual Nintendo with the current font was 67. And then the oval came in 70. So like 50 years.
That's crazy.
And then they obviously revised it, but they did before the oval. They did this like trapezoid thing first. They experimented with that for a couple of years, but we're talking 50 years. The current logo.
So I think a logo that has, the longer this logo stays around, the longer that they're associated with it. I think
this is it.
This is it, and the less you want to try to make it current in any way, shape, or form, because whatever you change it to, then you're never going to strike gold like this twice, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, it's so ingrained. It's like the Walt Disney logo.
Right.
You can't imagine them changing that logo.
Right.
Ever. The font, anything.
If you ever did, it would immediately look aged and tacky in almost no time.
Because things become ingrained in culture, become classic. They just, in your mind, like, part of, I think, the reason people went nuts when they went to New Coke, they also changed the font.
Yeah, they did.
This block font instead of the script. And people were like, what the hell is this? This is the way the Coke logo's been for 100 years. And now you're changing it. Like, what are you doing? And with logo and branding, it gets into business speak, but the whole point of having a brand is that people know about it. They know what it stands for, and they recognize it. The minute you try to tinker with it, you could be starting from scratch again. Why would you do that? Why would you risk it? If you may never get back up to the point, scratch and claw to get to the point you're at, having a recognizable, brand. I
think you could show a lot of people that oval and be without the text in it and be like, what's missing? And people would probably go Nintendo.
You can make that argument. Or even just that font and write out something else in that font.
Easily.
I don't know anyone who uses that font. They have one called Pretendo font. You can download it that mimics it. I've used a little bit.
I wonder what the typeface is actually called. I wonder if it has a name. It's just called Nintendo.
I'm sure that a lot of times they just mock it up, the artist probably on staff, 50 years ago, whenever they started in the 60s. Fils-Aimé's mention of a cleaned up presentation. What was he talking about here? So okay, let's
so he talks about cleaning up the presentation, and that's what they need to do. And basically, and that started with, I think, really with the Wii.
Okay.
Was they really, everything got very, sterile. Generally bring
neutral colors
but when you say sterile can sometimes have a negative connotation. But it just very clean presentation, lots of white. Lots of use of space. Everything looked very professional and ageless. It didn't make any overly ham-fisted appeals to youth. I don't know if you remember like their advertising campaigns in like the late 90s and early 2000s, but Nintendo got kind of
edgy,
play
it loud, things like that.
And there was like, there was a lot of like sexual innuendo in some of their ads and stuff like that. And
they went extreme. They try to like
what's in your pants and stuff like that, and it's just like the magazine ads that like the scrawly like writing and stuff like that, and it just
guys with like like mohawks or whatever they probably did.
And like I said, you can do that, and at the time you may be like, yeah, this is the right advertising, but you look back on advertising like that. I mean, there are some people like me who looked at it and was like, this is dumb advertising then. But you look back on that as a whole, everyone looks back on that 15 years later and goes, that looks dumb as shit. You can
try to be edgy at the time.
You can point out exactly where, what era that advertising is from. When you do something, I think, a little bit cleaner like they did with the Wii, it becomes a little bit more timeless.
It's classier.
Yes.
Well, when you talk about the play it loud and that stuff, that's when they took the wrong turn. That's when Sony was starting to beat the hell out of them too, right? At that point. So they probably were like desperate. They'd be like, okay, what can we do now to try to like gain back some of that market we lost?
Yeah.
Like big time lost.
Right.
In that PlayStation versus N64 war, and didn't work out. I love this article. I want to listen to this now. Reggie, I give Reggie more and more respect the more I hear about this guy. He said that when he interviewed for his role at Nintendo, he got this first job in 2003 and came into more power in 2006. He confessed to owning both an Xbox and a PlayStation 2, but not a GameCube. He was honest, and I always tell people when you interview, be honest, never lie, because obviously they can read you, but they'll figure it out if you're lying. So here's a guy trying to get a job at Nintendo saying, I don't own your current console, which also could have been telling to the marketplace at the time, though. Because more people had a PS2 than a GameCube for sure.
Right.
And the Xbox was doing Game Busters as well. So, he called it the lapsed Nintendo status. As a consumer, I could see issues and opportunities. He had previously owned the N64 and other Nintendo hardware. I could have a sense of where the needs were, not only from a sales and marketing perspective, but just from an overall perspective. There you go. Yeah. Smart guy.
Yeah, I want to listen to that episode too.
Yeah, I want to.
It sounds like it would be fairly interesting. I'm not big on the whole, like, Reggie seemed like a pretty cool guy. But I'm not big on the deification of like business personnel, and it got weird with Nintendo fans and Reggie for a while. But he definitely seems like an interesting person, a very smart person, and I think that would be a good listen. I'd like to learn more. But I
think as time goes on, you're gonna, with these stories coming out, you're gonna be like, he really was more influential.
I'm sure he was, and that's what I'm saying. Like, even though I'm not like into that whole like weird cult of personality stuff, I do believe he did a number of good things for Nintendo, and I do believe a lot of it did stem from him truly growing to like the company that he worked for.
Because this is important. Like when he said he said he wouldn't take full credit for it. The tough decision to include Wii Sports as a pack-in. He advocated for it rather than potentially sell it separately and move 40 to 50 million copies at $40 or more, which was the absolute best decision to have it packed in with the Wii.
Yep.
Was a brilliant decision to do that. You would not have sold 40 to 50 copies at $40 or more. You would have sold like a few million.
Especially in an era where the pack-in game had become a lost thing.
But that pack-in game differentiated itself from the other consoles in the market, and it's what gave that initial huge push.
Because it used what was there so well.
You could have if they packed in like a new Super Mario Brothers game instead. Yeah, it would have done well, but it wouldn't have been that paradigm shift that the Wii provided, and what got it over 100 million in sales.
It's fucking insane. I mean, you think about how like popular the PS4 is, and I think that's only done like maybe, I don't know what it's at now, 60,000 maybe.
60 million?
60 million, yeah.
But think about that. There'll never be another Nintendo console, knock on wood, that gets to 100 million like that. That's insane. That could be the last time you ever see that. So.
Okay.
What's the PS4 at?
Sony just hit 100 million.
What, the PS4?
Yep.
It's been out for 7 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Impressive.
All right. But Nintendo ain't doing it. Nintendo has that slice market now. They're not going to hit 100 million again.
Hey,
with that.
yeah, I mean, 40 mil, 50 mil, or whatever they'll end up with.
Probably end up between 50 and 60 for the Switch, and that's after the 12 million from the Wii U. That's great. And plus, again, the 3DS is dying out, and that sold a ton with the DS there. So, all right, I like Reggie. Don't make him a god. He's a nice guy, a good businessman. I walked next to him one time. I should have said hi to him. I was at E3. He had his 3DS in his hand. He was walking around. He's probably street passing. So. I mean,
and that's, I think, why so many people did fall in love with him, because they're like, oh, a company guy who actually does the stuff that he sells. Which is, I mean,
you
that's
should
unique.
if you're smart.
Yes. If you're smart, you do.
He worked at what pizza company before that? I'm sure he was eating lots of pizza.
40 pizzas in 30 days.
He wasn't doing that. He was the anti-Papa John.
Thank goodness.
All right, well, listen to that. What's the podcast called?
Present Value.
Present Value. Check it out there.